Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Meninist podcast. And last week we talked about some Biden voters regretting their decision for voting for Biden. And also what took Trump out of office, part one. Well, this is part two coming up in just a minute. Boy, Pop, this has been a crazy week in politics.
It has.
Oh, my gosh. Between the FDA making the COVID vaccine now approved.
Ooh, that's going to open up
Yes,
a can of worms.
that's right. And thousands of Americans being left in Afghanistan under the
Oh.
Biden administration.
So sad.
It's just heartbreaking. I know of several families who have people sick with COVID right now, and it's just been a crazy week. So we're going to continue the craziness.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's going to let up anytime soon, and that's probably one of the good reasons to keep on podcasting.
That's
and
right.
exposing some of the things that we've been discovering.
Right.
So from the get-go, why don't you tell everybody exactly how they can get a hold of us?
Okay, sure. So we are the Meninist, and that is a play on words. So you're going to take the word feminist and put M in front of it to make Meninist. TheMeninist. You can find us on Rumble. If you do find us on Rumble at the Meninist, please go ahead and like our page, because we are constantly putting out weekly podcasts, and we would like for you to get the notification when we add a new one.
Right.
You can also find us on Getter. Getter is better. Getter, the app.
Is better.
Yes, GETTR is blowing up. Like, there's just big names coming on to Getter. And I think I saw it last week that the CEO of Getter is working hard to get President Trump on there. That would be pretty cool.
I heard there's 2 million Getter hits.
Plus, that was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so it's probably grown since then.
Yes, and so we are on Getter at the Meninist. Same thing, TheMeninist. And then you can also send us an email.
That's right.
And our email is,
Love to hear from you.
yes, is themeninist1621@gmail.com.
That's right. And if you want to be a guest, you can email us, and we'd love to have you come in and discuss some of the topics with us.
Yes, we are particularly looking for people with their COVID stories. If you were diagnosed with COVID with symptoms and you went to the doctor and you got hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, we would love to hear your story.
Oh, yes.
And then the consequent, if you went to the doctor and they refused to give it to you, we'd love to hear your story.
That's right.
Either one, we'd love to hear you and bring you in. Because after our series of how the Democrats successfully took Trump out of office, we will go back to talking about COVID and all of the latest and greatest news.
This particular pandemic has changed lives.
Yes.
It's
killed.
It's killed people.
It's killed people.
So
It's killed our
sad.
economy.
Businesses have closed.
Yes.
I can't imagine a young child receiving the jab. I can't
Uh-huh.
imagine them having to go to school with masks, which
It's
is
awful.
a
Terrible.
sad thing.
Terrible, terrible. And we've known people who have died of this
We
disease.
have, yeah.
And one of the major factors was not given early intervention by their doctor. And so it is something to talk about. I feel like if we all sit silent, then COVID wins. And we have to talk about it. And we have to not be afraid to talk about it. And so that's why we're here.
That's right.
And so with that, last week we talked about part one. If you haven't seen it, we encourage you to go back, because we start from the very beginning of when Trump came down the escalator. And we're talking about the steps Democrats put into place to try to take him out of office, which were so many that we have to go through the alphabet plus. We finished on letter I last week. And so if you haven't seen that, please go back and look. But we're going to resume with the many plans, game plans we called it, the Democrats used to try to get him out of office. And we're not successful until our last final plan, which we'll talk about
In part 3?
Yeah, part 3.
Right.
And so let's start with letter J. So Gorsuch was up for nomination from the Supreme Court. Yes. And
they came out of the woodwork on that one.
Yes, they did. It was because a Supreme Court judge retired.
Mm-hmm.
And they happened to retire right after President Trump was elected, which was interesting timing. A lot of Democrats were upset and say, why didn't you retire when Obama was still in office? But they waited until after Trump was elected, and so he had to pick a Supreme Court nominee, and he picked Judge Gorsuch. And oh my gosh, here came the attacks. And
it was a media circus.
Yes, and not only did they attack Gorsuch, but they also attacked Trump for picking Gorsuch. And so immediately it started. He was an unfit president, so who was he to be able to pick a Supreme Court justice?
Here we go.
But
and wasn't he in the middle of that whole
Russia collusion?
Yes. Shifty shift.
That's right. He was in the middle of that. He was also in the middle of them trying to 25th Amendment him.
Yeah.
When he picked Gorsuch. And so they came after him saying he was unfit mentally and physically and everything, all the above, to be able to pick a Supreme Court justice. And they were not successful in taking him out with that because no matter what, an elected president gets to pick a Supreme Court justice. And, of course, it has to go through all the many steps in order to become the Supreme Court justice.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a rightful job of a president. And so they were unsuccessful in trying to take him out by calling him unfit to be able to pick the Supreme Court justice.
I do remember the media just going nuts. And I've seen in the past, Amy, I've seen situations where the Senate is actually interrogating or vetting somebody that's going to be brought into office. But if you remember, they were having people screaming out.
Yes.
That were actually in the facility.
That's right.
Hollering out. I mean,
that's right.
Like hacks.
Yes.
Just hollering out these accusations, and he's not fit, and blah,
right,
blah.
Right.
That?
Yes. Well, I do remember that, but wasn't it revealed later that they were paid protesters?
They were paid protesters,
and that kind of started the whole Antifa movement because these paid protesters are literally getting paid, and they're very well funded and organized to go disrupt certain things like that.
Right.
And they did it with each Supreme Court nominee, but they also did it with many other events that Trump held where they're paid to just go out. And do you remember when there were pallets of bricks that were just dropped off in random places where they thought that the paid protesters would come up? You realize now there's no pallets of bricks anywhere?
Nowhere to be found.
Now that he's out of office, all of a sudden we don't need bricks anymore.
Because they just magically appeared on street corners.
That's right.
And then
interesting.
And then they were giving these excuses. Well, we're doing construction. Well, there wasn't a construction site within miles of those bricks.
Maybe the bricks are too expensive now under the Biden regime. Maybe they're 3 times the price.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's crazy. I thought about that the other day. I was like, what happened to the pallets of bricks? They just disappeared. And we don't see them anymore.
Yep.
Okay. So that was plan J. That did not work. So plan K, they tried to impeach Trump remember we talked about the cheapening of the word impeachment because they literally tried like 25 times to impeach him. But they tried to impeach him for money laundering. I don't know if you remember this. But they were saying that he was using his Trump businesses and nonprofits that were, okay, so Eric Trump had a nonprofit way before Trump became elected as president and then became president for childhood cancer. And his nonprofit was helping to fund families whose kids were diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to say that Trump was using his presidential office to help fund Eric Trump's nonprofit, as well as other things. And Eric Trump was able to prove that indeed was untrue, but then he also went ahead and stopped the nonprofit, unfortunately, because he didn't want any association with his father's presidency maybe having anything negative to do with his nonprofit. And so he went ahead and shut it down,
Gotcha.
unfortunately. But there was no founding for it. They looked into it. All of his finances were cool. Everything was kosher, and there was no incidences of Eric Trump's foundation being discredited in any way. But I do know of a foundation, Clinton, allegedly, where money was laundered.
Yes.
Because it did come out publicly in the media that Hillary Clinton used her foundation to pay for her daughter's wedding. And you can't do that.
Wow.
She used foundation funds to pay for Chelsea's wedding. It came out in the media that happened.
Meanwhile, the people in Haiti.
Are still suffering.
Yeah.
Money was funded into her nonprofit, the Clinton Foundation for Haiti, and Haiti never saw it.
That is so sad.
But Eric Trump, who has literally helped save and fund families of children with cancer, gets shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
That's right.
And it's just insane.
It's so one-sided.
Yes. So that money laundering impeachment, they had to tear those papers up because it turned out to be unfactual. So then that leads to the next plan, Plan L. They tried to impeach him for treason. Do you remember this?
You have to refresh my memory.
Okay,
on
this
one.
still has to do with Russia collusion, but the specific title for this impeachment drafting of paperwork was treason, because they said that he worked with Russia in order to promote treason to the United States. And this all had to do with his collusion with Russia to get himself elected, the election being influenced by Russia in his favor. This is one of my favorite ones, though, because, of course, they did an extensive investigation, several of them. I know of 3 that cost the taxpayers millions.
The FBI
Yes.
definitely investigated
Yes, and you know who
all these allegations.
You know who actually it turned out Russia did work with for
Hillary?
the Clintons for 2020 election.
The dossier?
Yes. But it's like literally we said water off a duck's back, and it seems like everything they accused him of to try to impeach him, Democrats have done. It's almost like that's where they got the idea. Like, you know what? We're illegally funneling money, so let's accuse him of illegally funding money.
And I've heard that before, where you hear them accusing somebody of something, and if you look really deep into it, it's usually them that have caused.
Well, it makes you wonder how they come up with these egregious ideas.
Yeah.
And it's like they had to look within themselves.
Yep.
It's like, okay, we'll probably get to it, so I don't want to mention that. Okay, so then that didn't work out. Of course, all the investigations came several years later, the evidence from the investigations, and it turns out that actually it was the Clinton campaign who colluded with Russia. So he was not treasonous, and they had to tear up those papers. All right, so then Plan M, they tried to impeach Trump for revoking security clearances of people no longer in the government. So as a result of all of these investigations with Russia collusion and money laundering and campaigns being non-kosher and okay, so then he went ahead and revoked security clearances of people that were within his government that turned out to be shady, which he very much can as president. That's part of his title. But the Democrats tried to impeach him for doing that, for revoking security clearances. I can't think off the top of my head of somebody he revoked, but it was like it would be a name we all know, like Schiff, for example, Adam Schiff. Like that guy was so high up within the ranks of the investigation committees that he was able to have security clearances. And when it came to be about that, he was actually of the opposite, and he was against the Trump administration. Trump went ahead and revoked him of his security. Well, the Democrats tried to impeach him for it, but that's actually something a president is allowed to do. And so again, the impeachment papers got torn. It's like they were trying to impeach him for things that every other president has been able to successfully do because it's part of their job. And it was all over the news. And how dare he revoke these security clearances? And it turns out that he's more than able to do that at any time.
Right. If he feels that something isn't
right.
correct.
That's right.
Yeah,
he doesn't
can
even have to
revoke
give
that.
reason. He can just revoke your security clearance. He has that capability. So that was Plan M, and that did not work. Okay, so Plan N, obstruct everything Trump attempts to do in Congress. And
Boy,
it
that was
seemed
something
like
else.
it was obstruction after obstruction after, including certifying the people he wanted to do jobs, like secretaries of this and secretaries of that.
Yeah.
They would not put these people in place, and so they had to act as acting secretaries, because, and I think if I remember correctly, Trump was the only sole president with people who were not certified to do their job for years into his presidency. Like there was no other president who had to wait as long to get their people certified to do their jobs. And it was like they literally tried anything he tried to do, between the wall, between repealing Obamacare, between everything he tried to put forth in Congress. They obstructed everything. There was an obstruction. Nothing was bipartisan. Even down to things that the Democrats said before Trump was in office they wanted to do. For example, under Obama, they wanted to build the wall at the border. And then Trump gets into office and all of a sudden they said, nope, we don't want to build the wall.
Right.
Do you remember that?
I remember that.
And it felt like everything was being obstructed, even down to small judges were like obstructing things. And we're
to this day
preventing Trump from being able.
Do you remember Pelosi's tearing up of the speech at the State of the
Yes,
Union?
I do remember that.
God, was that cruel?
Man,
that's just flat out
disrespectful.
Disrespectful. That is a sitting president. And then this. Ooh, I'm gonna watch my language. Tears
this
up,
lady,
like on national TV, just tears it up.
And you know, her face was so. Could you imagine living in such anger all the time, where that's an action you choose to do? Like that is something a toddler would do.
That was pretty much a screw you.
Yes, but it's so
act of defiance.
It's so toddler-like. It's so immature and unnecessary.
And you know that little action fortifies everything we've been saying in the last two podcasts.
It really does.
Because you've got a sitting Congress that literally hated this man with
passion. And we'll get into the why in part 3, but it's like it was so obvious, the hatred. And it's like, I didn't care for President Obama. I didn't. But I never spoke about him or wished anything upon him like Congress and senators openly did.
Right.
You know, like we talked last week about Maxine Waters getting up and telling everybody to throw, Trump administration people out and get in their face. It's like never in my lifetime have I ever seen such opposition. Have you?
No, not like this. And blatantly.
And you lived through some years.
It's in your face. They don't care.
And you lived through some stuff because you lived through Nixon and you lived through the tearing down of the wall by Reagan and the war.
The Vietnam War was there was a lot of static in the air during the 60s.
But the office of the president was respected.
It was.
Yes.
It was more of a respect. And, and I really blame the media and, of course, the internet and social media. You've got such an outlet now to express like we're doing today.
Right.
Back then you didn't have that. You had the 3 networks, and that was pretty much it.
That's right.
And they were back, even back then, they were bought and, paid for to a certain degree.
And I'm so old, I remember that TVs at like midnight used to shut off, and they would play the Star Spangled Banner.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, and
that happened when I was a kid.
The Indian.
With
that's probably not very politically correct now. So
not
they probably
now.
don't have an Indian anymore.
Right? No. But when the TV used to shut off at midnight, they used to play the national anthem.
The national anthem.
I mean, there's always been a sense of pride, and it feels like it's waning, big time.
Yeah,
just over time.
Yeah, but there was a song done by let's see if I can remember his name, but it'll come back.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Keep on going.
All right, so obstruct everything. Plan O, impeach Trump for violation of the Emoluments Clause. Oh my gosh, do you remember this?
No.
Okay.
I've got no clue what that one was all about.
Okay, let me think if I remember this correctly. The Emoluments Clause. Will you look it up, because I don't want to misspeak here.
Sure.
Look up Emoluments Clause, because I remember this. This happened, I think, twice, where they tried to impeach him for a violation of the Emoluments Clause. And I want to make sure that it's spelled EMOLUMENTS. It's spelled just like it sounds. I remember researching this in detail when we were looking to do these podcasts, and I researched. They tried to do this twice, two different times. Did you find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Out of Wikipedia now, it's the Foreign Emoluments Clause is a provision in Article 1, Section 9,
Okay.
Clause 8 of the United States Constitution that prohibits the federal government from granting titles of nobility and restricts members of the federal government from receiving gifts, emoluments, offices, or titles from foreign states or monarchies.
That's right.
Without the constants of the United States, also known as the Titles of Nobility Clause. It was designed to shield federal office holders of the United States against so-called corruption, foreign influences. The clause is reinforced by the corresponding prohibit on state titles of nobility.
Okay. So what they were trying to do is they were trying to say that if you remember with the Russia collusion, when the Russian collusion came out to be false, they tried to state that President Trump violated the emoluments clause by giving the head of Russia, in this case Putin, power to influence the United States.
Okay.
So that they were kind of in cahoots as president of one country and president of another in order to influence the election. So when the Russia collusion was proven to be untrue, now President Trump gave Putin power to have influence in our country. That's what the emoluments clause said. And they tried to impeach him twice that I can remember for violating it. Because you can't give another country's head or lead any power in our country. In other words, they tried to do it with Putin, and they also tried to do it with President Xi in China. They tried to say, which is ironic kind of now, that President Trump gave President Putin and President Xi power to influence our country. And it proved out to be completely false. And he had a relationship with those two men because as you're trying to create trade agreements and
Or they're foreign dignitaries.
that's right. You have to create a relationship with them.
Right.
And they were accusing him of creating too close of a relationship with those two presidents specifically.
So that was actually placed in the impeachment.
That's right. So they drafted
Arguments.
impeachment articles over it, and of course it proved to be he did not do any of those things. They did not have any power in our country.
And it was proven by the Department of Justice.
It was
FBI, the investigation.
They did another investigation, and it proved to be false.
Because Congress had to be all over that.
Right.
I know. Adam Schiff was, and Pelosi, both of them were really, really looking and uncovering everything they could to try to trap this man.
And then, do you remember when he met with Kim Jong-un?
Yes, I do.
Kim
remember.
Jong-un. Okay, they tried for a second in the news cycles to suggest that maybe he was in cahoots with him, but it got shut down real quick because everybody knows that that's impossible.
Yeah.
But it's like anytime he had any positive relationships with a foreign president, they tried to say that he was initiating power exchange between the two. And so, yes, and so that's what they tried.
And it was the first time. I remember there was a news brief of him actually crossing that line between North and South Korea. Do you remember
That's
that?
right, yes.
Because I think he came in from South Korea and then he crossed that particular borderline and went into North Korea.
That's right.
They were waiting for him in the North Korean side.
And I want to say he was the first president to do that.
Yes.
Yes. And wasn't he
Yes.
nominated for Nobel Peace Prize for that?
He was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so that was anytime he had a positive relation with a foreign dignitary, they tried to say that he was violating the emoluments clause.
And this is after he called him Rocket Man.
I know. He wasn't very friendly about him when he...
Rocket Man.
It's
and
like,
then,
what?
And then he crosses over and still has negotiations.
I know.
And
from what I understand, Kim Jong-un had mad respect for President Trump and liked him.
Oh, yeah.
Liked him.
Yeah.
Wanted to have a positive relationship with him.
He did.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because then they're not going to come bomb us or, surprise us or some stuff.
Well, Trump's philosophy was you befriend these people.
Yes.
Because let's face it, a lot of these countries, people still get up.
That's right.
They put on their pants like
That's
we
right.
do. They go to work.
That's right.
They try to come home and make a meal for their families.
That's right.
They may have a different meaning or ideology than we do
That's right.
here in the United States. But nonetheless, these are just regular, ordinary people. Unfortunately, some of them are in bondage.
That's right.
But nonetheless, I think that's his philosophy.
That's right.
These are just people that are trying to survive like we are.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but Obama did it with Cuba, and it didn't last long.
Yeah.
He tried to make peace with Cuba so we could open up the embargo, and we did for a couple of weeks, but then Cuba got crazy and we had to close it up again.
Right.
But, I mean, that's part of a president's job, is to create peace with these foreign nations that could be a threat. And he was successful. But the Democrats, of course, hated him for it and tried to impeach him. So that was Plan O. That didn't work. Plan P, I know you're going to remember. Trump's tax returns.
Oh, yeah. They're still working on
They're
that
still
one.
working on that. They cannot stand it that he does not have to.
Mm-mm.
Now, the precedent is most president-elect, president nominees show their tax returns.
Yes.
But you don't have to.
You don't have to.
It's not a requirement.
And, his excuse was, and it's a valid excuse, you're in the middle of an audit
That's right.
that's been going on for years.
That's right.
And essentially, that would interfere with the audit if
That's
you
right.
start exposing things.
Right.
So,
Right.
You really can't blame him for that.
Okay, but what do you think was the reason the Democrats wanted to see his tax returns? What were they trying to suggest?
Well, he had some issues back in the 80s with some of the hotels that he built that actually went under.
Okay.
And he used the laws that are on the books in order to make money, because
That's right.
essentially that's the whole idea.
Right.
Is to make money as a businessman.
That's right.
So, he was going through bankruptcies and what have you, but he was using the bankruptcy laws to his benefit,
That's right.
because for whatever reason, the economy tanks. Some hotels don't do well. I know there were some pretty significant size hotels.
But I mean,
in
if
Atlantic City.
he's following the laws, then I don't see the big deal. I'm sure a lot of people used those same laws in 08.
Correct.
So what's the difference? Like, he's not allowed to use the laws for his benefit if he's a president
Well,
or president-elect?
there's no telling what they would find. I know that he would. I mean, he's got to be on the up and up as far as what he does for a living.
Yes.
He's a builder.
And he's a billionaire.
He's a billionaire, but he's
Right.
also a builder. And
Right.
in that, there's a lot of write-offs and what have you.
Right, right.
So, and not to mention, I mean, my understanding was he made not really an excuse. It was more of a declaration during a news conference where he says, "Look, I take X amount of dollars and I set them aside for my taxes."
Right. Well, wait, before you go on, do you remember it was a morning talk show host, I can't remember who it was, a famous one,
Yeah.
from the left side media, who was leaked 2 tax documents of his,
Mhm.
and the amount he paid in taxes in those 2 tax document years were more than Hillary and Obama combined.
I remember that.
And they
yeah.
were like, and they shut that
real quick. It's like,
They-
don't expose
they
that. for
shut
God's
that
sake.
down real fast, because it was like,
Right.
I mean, why are we even caring about this when the man paid millions in taxes?
Right. Well, I remember there was
Remember that?
It was a nightly interview with
Yes.
with and this woman was a hack,
Yes,
and he said, "Look, I put money aside
right.
every year for my taxes,
Uh-huh.
and it's more than I need, but
That's
I do
right.
it as a cushion."
Right.
And that was verified. He
Yes.
does do that.
Yes. But it's like he paid more than Hillary and Obama combined.
But look, one of the major things he did as a president was put forth these tax cuts,
That's right.
which, by the way, they're about to expire. They haven't expired already.
Yeah.
And the tax cuts allowed corporations to really invest in their corporation.
Yes.
So you had, instead of paying that money out to the federal government, they're able to reinvest that money into their business.
Which makes sense.
Which makes sense.
Yes.
So that's pretty much his MO.
Right.
So, he's going to do everything in his power not to pay the tax.
Right,
if he
right.
can help it.
That's right.
But anyway, that's still an ongoing thing. And I can understand why he does what he does, because as a small business owner, they will try to get every penny they can.
Well, it kind of irks my chain that as a middle class American, that I pay astronomical amount in taxes. My husband and I have paid more in the last 3 years in our entire marriage in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So I pay an astronomical amount of taxes to pay for fake Russia collusion investigations.
Ooh.
I'd like my money back, please,
Bingo.
government.
Bingo.
Please. I mean,
What a waste.
how about you use my tax money to help the homeless in California? I'd be okay with that. How about you use my tax money to help public school systems fund books for their classrooms? I'd be okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is y'all using my money for stupid, invalid investigations.
Not only that, that's good. It's well said. But what about freaking lobsters on treadmills?
Yeah, no thanks. What do you
I-
mean by lobsters on treadmill?
Oh, you didn't hear about that?
No.
They've got it may be, I don't think it's a lobster. It's actually a shrimp. They got a shrimp on a treadmill in an aquarium, and that your taxpayer goes to that.
What are they
Your taxes go-
studying? That
I
is
don't
so funny.
I guess how far a shrimp can go before it passes out. I don't know.
Oh, Lord.
But you're right. There's so much waste, government waste,
Oh, man.
and
Using my tax dollars. I want my tax dollars to go to something
Can
beneficial
you
for me.
imagine if you give that money back to the people? And
Oh, my
allow them-
gosh.
that would stimulate the economy.
And by the way, these $500 Biden checks that I'm getting, do you guys realize that you're going to have to write those off when you do your taxes? Like, you don't get to keep that money. You get it now, but then it doesn't count towards your tax return.
Not only that, your youngest will
Yes.
have to pay for that.
I know.
It's
Forget
sad.
all 3 of my kids are going to have to pay for
It's
it.
sad.
It's absolutely sad. So anyway, that's tax returns. We heard about that. We're still hearing about that.
Yep.
But rolled right off his back. He said, "You can't. Sorry." And they were like, "Well, gosh, I guess we can't."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the next plan. The next plan after that gives 16-year-olds the vote. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Real quick. I have a 16-year-old. He's about to be 17-year-old. I don't want him voting. He can't even pick up his shoes on a regular basis and put them where they belong.
Well, coming to your son's defense, I would say he's probably one of the few that I would allow to vote.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even want him to vote.
Although you live with him, so
No, I don't want him to vote. 16-year-olds have no business voting. They can't remember to zip up their fly on a regular. Doing TikTok dances is most important. They are not mature enough to be able to select their president of the United States.
Yeah.
But that was something Democrats pushed hard. And why do you think they would want 16-year-olds to vote?
because they want to flood the voting system.
So TikTok, you know the app
For
TikTok?
Democrats.
Democrats are currently campaigning on TikTok, which by the way is allegedly owned by China. And they are creating propaganda on TikTok. They're paying influencers on TikTok to promote the vaccine. And because they know that TikTok is influential to 16-year-olds and younger. And they want, okay, if my kid can be influenced that easy, which my kid cannot. He was raised right in all the ways. He was raised right, not left. But if my kid can be influenced, say something like TikTok, to take a vaccine
Yeah.
by an influencer that's not them,
Yeah.
then no, my kid's not eligible to vote. But that's what the Democrats are currently doing. You can look it up. It's
Yeah.
crazy. They're paying TikTok influencers to influence kids to get the vaccine right now. So we're going to trust these same kids to vote for our president? No.
16's too young. I agree.
Too young.
I agree.
Way too young. You need to be an adult. 18. 18 is
you
great.
gotta pay. You gotta pay for gas.
Yes, you got to be able to pay for gas, a couple of
and
bills.
watch that paycheck stub and going.
Taxes.
What the heck happened here?
That's right.
Hey, mom and dad. What's with this over here? This federal tax.
That's
thing?
right. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. That needs
that's
to
an
happen.
awakening.
Yes, that needs to happen before you're eligible to vote for president, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the next plan. They figured that if they could get young people to vote, that they could basically now have a different age group to be able to control and influence. All right, next one, eliminate the Electoral College.
Well, we know about that.
Yes, we know about that, but this happened way before the 2020 election. This happened via the 2016.
You can see their plan. Huh?
Yes.
To take this thing over.
As we go through this, the plan comes clearer and clearer, which is why we wanted to go through it.
Right.
So the plan was to eliminate the Electoral College before the 2020 election, Why would you need to do that if there wasn't a plan in place?
There you go.
Because they thought they knew he was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
The economy was rocking. There were Trump flags and signs everywhere. They knew he was going to win. So prior to 2020, they wanted to eliminate the Electoral College and just go by the popular vote.
Which means that the major cities of this country,
And the major cities are
which
primarily
are primarily liberal,
That's right.
are going to be voting for our president.
That's right.
And we here in little Hicktown, USA,
Uh-huh.
we don't have a say-so.
That's right.
Because we know darn well we would vote, what?
Yeah. Trump, 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 Trump.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're going to. I
So-
mean, let's face it, the rural countries are definitely, we are Bible-toting, gun-toting rednecks,
Right.
and apparently they don't like us.
Well, the Electoral College, as we stated before, was wisely created by our founding fathers, and it turns out you can't just eliminate it.
Yep.
So that plan did not work.
That's right.
And
And
so
boy, they were wise in doing that, weren't they?
well, they were wise in
Those
doing
men
a
are
lot of
geniuses back
things.
in the day.
Yes, they were. I think it
Very
was
well studied.
spiritual. I really do think it was spiritually influenced.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay, when they said one nation under God, God said, "I got you."
Yep, got you covered.
And so, okay, how much more time do we have? How many more can we go through, Mr. Producer?
We got probably about 5 more minutes.
Okay, let's do one more because I think you remember this, and I think this is an interesting plan.
Okay.
Let imprisoned convicts vote. So right now, if you are an imprisoned convict, you do not have the eligibility to vote.
You lose that privilege.
That's right. You lose that privilege. And I want to say, if you're a felon, if you are convicted of a felony,
Mm-hmm.
even after you get out of prison, I don't think you can vote if you're a felon. So
A
I think that
registered
stays with you. Yes.
That's something we probably have to look up. I don't know if that's. I think I've heard that. In the
Yes.
past, though,
Yes.
before.
But why would the Democrats want imprisoned convicts to vote?
Well, why would they want illegals to vote?
Right.
And if you're illegally entered this country, you shouldn't have the ability to vote. I mean, you've been here illegally, so
Right.
voting is a privilege.
That's right.
I mean, back in the day, you had to have skin in the game in order to vote.
That's right.
You had to own property,
Uh-huh.
be a property owner,
That's right.
and you had to have a skin in the game. To
That's
vote.
right.
Nowadays, it's so corrupt that they're just gaining any way they can in order to gather a vote. They used the pandemic to do it, and I know we're sidetracking here
Uh-huh.
a bit because we've already done a podcast
Right.
on this, but it all ties in together.
Well, you want my theory?
Sure.
Because it's a small population of people within four walls that can be influenced. And so if you are able to influence the prisoners, let's say you say, hey, if we give you your right to vote, let's say Democrats give prisoners the right to vote,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now all of a sudden they can vote. Then what else can be promised to imprisoned people?
Yeah.
It's another class of people. And if you look at all of our prisons throughout the United States, it's a large class of people,
It is.
unfortunately. And so why would the Democrats want imprisoned convicts to vote? Because how easily influenced they can be.
Mhm.
They're desperate. They're in desperation. Even if you were to influence their sentence length, for example.
Well, think about it. It's a captive audience.
It's exactly my point.
you
That's a
gotta-
great way to put it.
You got a captive audience, and you're going to be able to influence them.
Yes.
By
You have a desperate
you put a
captive audience.
you put a narrative. And by the way, who did prison reform? Anybody you know did prison reform?
Yeah, my President Trump, did prison reform.
Okay.
Yes, and the prison reform has gotten thousands of people out of prison, by the way.
Yep.
Mainly
Innocent people. that-
mainly African American too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's
Prison
a racist.
reform. But he's a racist. That's a whole different podcast.
Yes, it
But
is.
yes, mainly African American people, men, fathers, have been freed. And you know why most of them were put in prison?
Why is that?
Biden's crime bill. 94 crime bill.
Mm.
So Biden's 94 crime bill put him in, and President Trump's prison reformation plan got him out.
Well,
But
there you
he's a
go.
racist.
There you go, folks.
Yeah, so that ends us on Plan Q. We might have to extend this
You know
because
what?
we're only on Q.
we can extend it. I mean,
Okay.
this is an ongoing podcast. and we
Actually,
can-
I lie. We're on S. We're on S, but we've got to get through Z plus
Wow. So we'll
because it's important we hit them all, Poppy, because it's going to open up the ultimate plan. All of these didn't work, and the desperation for the Democrats became very real.
I
So
agree.
you have to get through all of them to understand the master plan. So we might have to extend this to 4.
Right. Well, we'll continue next week, and we'll pick up where we left off and continue this podcast.
Yes,
Again, we want to thank everybody.
that's right. Thank you. We hope you have a wonderful week. We
Yeah.
are still praying for Haiti, and
Yeah.
we're still praying for Afghanistan, and we are still praying for those affected by COVID.
That's right.
Yes.
Our prayers go out to and recently there was a young man that was on a ventilator, and
Uh-huh.
we're hoping that he
Yes.
was actually making way. So
Well, he's an older man,
yeah,
which, we know the ventilators tend to be used on older people.
Right.
That's who gets affected the worst, unfortunately. But yes, he's a close in our family.
Right.
And so we are praying for
our
him.
prayers are for him. And
Yes,
for those that are suffering right now,
that's right.
Afghanistan, we pray for you, God.
Yes. And
bless you guys.
all you Americans, no American should be left behind.
Nobody should. Be
And
left
shame
behind.
on the Biden administration.
Yes.
Shame. I'm sorry, this on you. Shame on you.
Yep.
Shame on you.
No American should be left behind.
Yes.
But podcast world, we do love you.
We love you. We hope you have a wonderful week.
Yes.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.